welcome. Working on finishing up a stone tool today. This is Dacite. It's gotten pretty thin. I'm happy with it. So now the trick will be to do some pressure flaking to just get it to shape and sharpened on the edge. I'll put that away. Yep. It's pretty thin for me. That's I'm pretty happy. Now the trick will be to not break it as I finish it up. Just gonna take it real slow. Real slow. Slow and steady. Hopefully wins the race. Get my tools sorted here a little bit. All right. I keep misplacing my tools. All right. There's the primary tool. And this is the knife blade I'm working on, made of Dacite. Pretty thin. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Just gotta not break it in the remaining, last few steps. Can maybe straighten out this wonkiness a little bit. See how it's got a bit of a, I don't think it really had a curve. It just, the edge isn't along the center, so it has the illusion of, maybe it does have a little bit of a curve, but that's okay. I can probably straighten that out some. Grind down the edge to make it a little stronger. Put it on my rubber pad here. Okay, and I'm going to hold it tightly in this hand, but I'm going to have it down here. But just so you can see what I'm doing, then I'm going to put the tip of the copper tool on one of the low spots, like right there. And then I'm going to push with my arms and my legs, and that will press off a small flake in a controlled manner. So I'll go ahead and do that and see if I can keep the flake so you can see what I've done. Okay. So the flake I just pressed off is this little thing right here. See that? I know it's a little tough because it's black flake on top of a black rubber pad, but that's the flake I just pressed off. And so that's a very controlled way to do this. So in the earlier stages, like when it's a big rock, I'm using like a big billet, wham, and taking off large chunks. And then I work my way down to smaller billets and even smaller billets and then I start using the big pressure flaker. And now I'm in the last stages where I'm just using the small pressure flaker. And I'm going to take off, the weird low bits and try and make this a bit more symmetrical. It's not bad right now, but it could be even more symmetrical. Oh my God. So, see ya, Ricardo. We don't need that. Not at all. We don't need that here. We don't need it anywhere, my friends. All right, so I'm going to push off some flakes and I'll give you another look at it. How's everyone doing? Any questions that are on topic? Or even not on topic, at least polite. Abrading the edge makes it stronger so that when I go to push on it, the stone doesn't just crush. If it just crushes, then I can't get the flakes to carry into the center of the piece, and then I'll never be able to get it thin. It's kind of counterintuitive that you have to make it more dull in order to make it sharp. But that is how it works. All right. I'm kind of happy with this one, so I'm being careful. I don't want to break it. And breaking happens often. It's part of it, but I am going kind of slow because I'd rather not break it. This could make a nice piece. Those of you wondering, maybe I'll make here's a stone knife I made, mounted to an antler handle. So I could do something with this one. Maybe mount it to antler like so. Kind of like that. Very cool. Very cool stone knife. This is the way knives were made for thousands upon thousands of years. Isn't that crazy? This is what our ancestors needed to survive. It just blows my mind to think of it. I mean, given all the technology we have now and the different kinds of tools and steel and but for the longest time, it was people hitting one rock with another to make a specialized tool to do all the things that they needed to do to get to survive. Our ancestors were clever, rugged, and resourceful people. And I mean all of our ancestors. Not just mine, not just yours. If you go far enough back in history, all of our ancestors used stone tools. Isn't that awesome? So like, I don't know where you are, who your grandparents are, what language you speak. It doesn't matter. If you go far enough back in human history and pre-human history, stone tools. We all have ancestors that got by making stone tools. There are other old tools and other old craft traditions, but we don't know as much about them because the stone tools survive in the archaeological record. They're still there. They're still stone. And so when we're lucky enough to find them on an archaeology site or a paleoanthropology site, the tools are almost unchanged. And so we just happen to know a whole lot about the history of humans and their relationship with stone tools because they survive. They're still around. Undoubtedly, our oldest ancestors made tools out of bone and wood, but those things tend to degrade or rot. And of course, they've used plant fibers for making clothes or baskets or nets. But if we're talking about vast timescales, those things just don't hold up. Stone tools do, and so we find them and can learn a lot about what was going on based on the fact that they were using stone tools. It's crazy to think about. Very cool, I think. Very cool, and it's something we have in common. I think we could use more of that in the world, right? A recognition of the things we have in common. Getting thin. Got a bit of a fat area in here. I don't know if I'm going to try and go after it. Ugh, it would be great. I'll sneak up on it and see if I can improve it, but I'm a little wary of no guts, no glory. You gotta go for it sometimes, I guess. I'm just when they get this thin, you got a decent chance of breaking them. It just goes. It's part of it. So while the edge is sharp and useful, kind compared to like a steel knife, these are very brittle. So if I drop this on a concrete floor, it's breaking. But it doesn't make it any less useful. It just means you got to know its limits and be careful in how you use it. And incidentally, a stone knife, we call it a knife because it's a blade, it's got a sharp edge, so it has the form of a knife. But largely, it'd be used somewhat differently than the way we use a steel knife these days. Oh, good. We've got nasty people in the comments saying nasty stuff. And hide a few people here. Sorry, I need a dedicated moderator to keep that stuff hidden. Yeah, YM. I just did. I just got rid of Nick. I'm sorry. The messages had scrolled. Hey, Stones and Strops, making stone tools today. Making stone tools on a Christmas Eve. Oh, I guess I have a white beard, but I'm not Santa. So this is one I've been working on over a couple sessions, and it's getting pretty close. Please do subscribe. Check out my channel. I've got more stuff related to ancestral skills, sometimes called primitive skills. Making things from history and prehistory. You found a scraper. Awesome. That's cool, YM. I did archaeology for about four years right out of college. That's what I studied. But I had to give it up just because it was seasonal work. I could only work in the summers. And I got tired of not having a job every fall and winter. So I ended up, my career trajectory went another direction. But I miss it. And in recent years, I've kind of been getting it back to it on this level, making stuff. I don't have any scrapers, but I can certainly make some. I mean, this is kind of scraper-ish. They're often unifacially made. So this is bifacial. That means two sides, two faces, 1 and 2, bifacial. A lot of scrapers are unifacial. So a flake, you'll take a flake and only chip it from one side so that you get like a sharp right angle. And then that's used for scraping wood or hide or whatever. So scrapers often aren't very hard to make compared to something like this, because I'm trying to get this thin, whereas scrapers, thin doesn't matter really. So they're often a lot more straightforward to make. So sometime we can line this up and I'll like make it a point to make a scraper. So yeah, I'm happy with this. It's pretty thin. I got a bit of a wonk, it's a little bit of a curve out here, but I can probably, if I'm willing to sacrifice some of its overall size, either the length or the width, I can start further refining it and working that out. May or may not be worth it. I'll just kind of go and work on it little by little and answer questions, and we'll see where it goes, and hopefully I don't break it. That's definitely when I get close, when I'm like happy with a piece and I get like this close, I start thinking like, should I just stop? Should I just stop? I don't usually stop. So I've got a lot of broken practice pieces laying around. But if you want to get good at this, you got to break some rock. What's the hardest part? Oh, there's so much to this. I don't, what is the hardest part? You know, YM, you know, you could volunteer like for a short period if you could like take a couple weeks. You can sometimes volunteer on archaeological digs, and it's a good way to get your, you know, see if you like it, get some experience, meet some people who do it. I don't know. The hardest part is not breaking it in a way that you don't, is not breaking like the thing in half, right? Especially when it gets to be thin like this. Now here's like one that I didn't get thin, or I could still work on it and make it thinner and smaller. But when they get like this, like every time you go to work on it, you're like, is this the time I'm going to break it? YM, if you just volunteer on archaeological sites, sometimes you don't need to, you know, you don't need to be trained in it or anything. So it's a possible way to do a bit of archaeology without going back to school. And then you could see if it's something, you know, you really like doing, or if you find it tedious. It's a mix. It's a real mix of things. Hey, Zeph, what's up? Archaeology, it can be very exciting, but the vast majority of the time, it's very tedious. It's very boring. You're digging, you know, in some site, and you know you have to take it slow, because you can't just shovel in. You know, you're trying to find every detail in the stratigraphy of the soil for context, and so you have to go slow, and you have to dig a unit out completely, and most of the time there's nothing there. Yeah, I've done obsidian. It's a piece of obsidian right here. Check it out. Mammoth kill site. Wow. There are many of those, but I don't know the one that you're speaking of. Maybe of it, but I can't say off the top of my head. I mean, is it like Clovis or Folsom or something like that? All right, there's a weird zigzag up here at the top that I kind of want to address. What am I going to do? I don't know. Can you see that? Right here, it kind of goes out a little bit and then comes back. So it's got a bit of a bump right there. Oh, I should probably not be like a perfectionist about it. Oh, it's in Wyoming. Okay. Yeah, obsidian is cool stuff. This is dacite. This is obsidian. You can see the obsidian is shinier. You know, but they're similar. They have similar properties, which allows them to be flint knapped. The obsidian, I'd say, is more brittle, which makes it easier to when you're doing percussion. But it also makes it a little bit more fragile. So it's just a trade-off between how tough the rock is and how brittle it is. A lot of people love it, and you can make great stuff with it. A lot of very, very cool, you know, traditions, like among the Aztec and stuff. Oh, I'll have to check that article out. That sounds cool, I am. I'm sorry, this isn't a super exciting process because I'm not really whacking away at the stone here. I'm going slowly because I'd rather not break this. It's kind of coming out kind of well for me. So I'm kind of going slow and just pressure flaking a little bit here and there. And I think I'll shape this tang. I think I'll taper that down and maybe make it a little longer. Because what you can do is if you're mounting it, say, in an antler, see how the antler is kind of porous up there? If I boil this for a while in water, the inner part becomes very soft. And then if I make a point on here, I can push that in to the antler, and that'll be part of the process of hafting the knife to the blade, and it'll kind of hold in there, and then I can reinforce it with some pitch glue and sinew or whatever. But that's, you know, that would be a very secure way to start that hafting process. Of course, stone. Yeah, that cuts stone. I'm using this for abrasive. Sometimes I use diamond. I got a small set of files, right? Diamond files right here. I don't use them very often. As you can see, they're just get me out of trouble. Hey Chevy, I'm making stone tools. I'm making a blade right now. This is a blade I've flint napped out of dacite. Banded Clovis. I know what Clovis points are. I don't think I've seen banded Clovis. Is that the material, or is it the like something about the way it's flint napped that makes it banded? Oh, okay. Careful here. It's like I can't talk and concentrate at the same time, so I'm kind of running a risk. But I'm glad you joined me, and I'm going to do my best to both continue working on this and not break it. It's probably just beyond my skill level to accomplish that, but that's all right. We'll get there. Work on this tip a little bit. I meant to, you know what I'm going to do sometime soon here? I'm going to bring a whiteboard out so that when I'm trying to explain something about the process, maybe I can do a quick drawing and then show you that. I think that'll help, you know, just now and then when there's something I can't really demonstrate with my hand. Huh. Well, that's really cool, YM. I didn't know any of that. That's awesome. Okay, let's see. I got a tiny bit of a wonky spot right there. See that? Little step fracture. I'm going to try something a little unconventional, see if I can deal with that. Different copper tipped tool. See, it's got this kind of flat. I'm just going to hook that little crack and see if I can kind of pry off. Well, I'm grabbing it, but it's not really coming off. I think I can work my way through that with more pressure flaking. Hey Carol, what's up? Good to see you. So this is a piece I was working on a few nights ago. If you joined me then, it's gotten, I don't remember which night that was. It's like early last week maybe. So it's gotten smaller, but it's also thinner. So I'm just doing some pressure flaking on it, trying to refine it, make the edge straight. Bring it to the final shape. Okay. All right. Just got to be kind of careful here. I'd rather not break this one. I'm pretty used to breaking them, and it's like, you know, it's part of it. But when they kind of are coming out well, it's like, oh, okay, slow down. Let's not mess this one up. No, hey, Dog Soldier. No, this is sort of a, I guess you call it a pastime. All kinds of primitive skills or ancestral skills, because I'm interested in it, you know. So I make friction fires, you know, with bow drill and hand drill. I I do like primitive archery. You know, I've done a little bit of, you know, I make natural cordage, all that kind of stuff. You know, ancient skills that have been practiced around the world. Flintknapping is sort of a long-running one because, well, I'll be honest, I find it really difficult, and so I've been trying to learn it for several years now. And you know, I'm making progress, but it's slow. It's like, you know, a lot of things in life, if you really dive in, it's like hardcore for a month, it's like you get pretty good at it. But at least for me, this is not one of those things. Yeah, I am. I've made, well, I guess I've made 2 bows. I made an ash bow for a crossbow, which I got to bring out here so you can see it. And then I've also made a self bow out of Osage orange wood. So I've made a couple. I wouldn't call myself an expert at it, but you know, I've done a couple. I'd say in the whole world of primitive skills or ancestral skills, my favorite things are flint knapping and fire starting. Yeah, Osage, man, that stuff is awesome. I took a several-day course at a place in Vermont called the Roots School. Love those folks. Shout out to Brad and Sarah at the Roots School. They have classes and a skills gathering event Labor Day weekend every year. So I took the bow making class followed by the arrow making class. And I've also taken a flint knapping class at Roots. So that's a good place to learn some of this stuff if you happen to be in the northeast of the United States. If you're not, there are other places, of course. But that was a really great way for me to learn. I'd never made a bow. I'd done some flint knapping before, but it is a great thing to have some hands-on instruction because it's hard to learn all the subtleties from a book or something, even a video. No way. That's cool, Dog Soldier. That's awesome. Sculptures, huh? So you stone carver. What are you carving? Soapstone or something else? I'm trying to picture stone carving and like soapstone comes to mind. Hey Hamza, close. This is daylight. This is obsidian, just so you can compare the two. So you see how the obsidian is a lot shinier? But they're similar in the way they break, which is what allows us to use them for flint knapping. There are many stones that work for flint knapping, and volcanic glass, obsidian, is one of them, and dacite here is another one. Welcome back, stones and strops. You haven't missed a lot. Just slowly working on my edge, thinning it down. All right, I gotta decide what to do about that fat bit. If I want to deal with this curve here, it's gonna have to get narrower. It has to, because that's the way this works. Like every time you take flakes off to make it thinner, you're also reducing the edge. So as it gets thinner this way, it's gonna get smaller this way and this way. Well, thank you very much. Limestone, gypsum, alabaster, granite, and marble. Oh, granite's tough. That's very cool. Yeah, I could grind that off. It's true. I could do that. I could either use diamond files or I could use this abrader and take it down right there. That might be a way to go. The only thing is, this would leave a very different finish. It wouldn't be this flint napped finish. You'd be able to see this like totally smooth spot. It's conceivable that I could grind it a little and then flint nap over it. But again, because my edge of where the edge is, in order to take more flakes, it's gonna have to get a little smaller. I mean, I should probably just come to terms with it. For a knife, this is plenty long. Yeah, just a kind of trade-off and consideration you got to make. I'm going to avoid it for a little while and work on other parts while I think about how much in the way of a risk I want to take. So I'm going to grind a little weird spot for a second. I didn't used to do this at all because I thought it was like cheating. But a teacher of mine who's very good at this, he pointed something out, and that is that they find finished flint knap points, pieces on archaeological sites that have been ground. Obviously, they didn't use a modern abrasive. They used another stone, like a sandstone or something, and so it was done prehistorically too, and that made me feel a lot better about it. I'm like, okay, right. So, of course, they knew to do it, so they did it. So that means like, yeah, it's something that I can do too. I'm getting thirsty here. For those just joining, my name's Doug North. I'm practicing the ancient art of flint napping, working on this stone point right here. And here's like something I finished previously. This is a stone knife. And an antler handle. And it's mounted in the handle with pitch glue and sinew. So this is all, natural or primitive materials. The way it might have been done thousands of years ago. And you see it's got fine serrations. Because these are used a lot like a saw. Sometimes I cut into this just to show what that's like. Here, so I'll give a little demo with this knife. And you can see the sawdust on there because it acts like a saw. If you want like a slicing tool, you just pick up one of the waste flakes. These edges are insanely sharp, really, really sharp. So that's just an example of the kind of thing that can make. This is a different style of knife made by my friend. The idea here is that this one is used like this. You keep it here, and then when you're cutting, and then you can let go, do your thing, flip it back up, and do your cutting, processing, whatever it is you're working on. He's much better at this than I am, but this one, I might be happy to show him if I don't mess this up. Maybe I should thin out this tang a little bit. That has to happen if I want to use that for hafting. So I'll do that. I'll do some pressure flaking down there to make that thinner and probably longer. Let's see. Try and keep it symmetrical. Not that it matters a ton, but it sure does look better. Okay. Let's see. Just sort of making this a little thinner. and maybe making the corners a little sharper so that when the blade ends, it fits better with the handle. I'll show you in just a moment. So I'm sort of thinning out this tang, that as we might call it, so that eventually when this is a billet, not a handle, but I'd use something like this so that I can boil this, heat this up, and then insert the tang into it. Making this thinner and sharper so that it's easier to mount into the handle. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. Good to have you along as I continue to learn this ancient but tricky skill. Let's see. Looking a little asymmetrical. So I've got to go deeper on this side. No problem. Just sort of take a few flakes, flip it over, take a few more flakes. And check it from the check it up against the light so you can see if it's coming out evenly. Look at it from different angles. Turn it upside down so you're kind of getting different perspectives on it. So that's getting a little better. This still needs to be a little deeper. See, this one comes down farther. And I'll probably try to make these more of a right angle so that it meets up with the handle nicely. Let's see, which one needs to be deeper? This one. Okay, maybe start working on a point on the bottom so that when I push it into the antler, it, you know, it just sort of makes its own pathway. So I'm starting to taper this down up here. You've done some flint napping, Ender Baby? I apologize if I missed some comments. It's kind of a lot trying to like focus on this and read the comments. So sometimes I slip up, and I apologize. I'll do my best here. So giving that a bit of a point. Let's see, try to keep it on center. So you see how this is getting pointier? And that will help with this the mounting process when I get around to doing that. This would be kind of a big knife, but that's all right. I'm trying to find the sweet spot with my heater here. It's either raging hot or kind of off. Woo, look at that. It's big, but it would be cool. Yeah, yeah. So I've got traditional tools. I'm not using them, as you can tell, but I've got antler billets here. Of course, I've got a variety of hammer stones and antler flakers. Here's one. This one's gotten pretty blunt, but for those who don't know, this would be a more traditional type of tool, and be like a leather pad in the hand. So you'd hold it with some leather, pick your low spot, and then you press in. Yeah, this antler needs to be sharpened a little. I have a bunch of these. They're just not here. They're in the house. I'm mostly using modern tools now, just because in the process of trying to learn this, I'm putting in a lot of hours. And at one point, I was doing it so much that I got like this really bad repetitive strain injury in my elbow, like tennis elbow, and it hurt and it stopped. I had to stop for a long time. And so someone I know who's much better at flintknapping said, you know, if you want to like keep at it with fewer injuries, you know, you might consider using modern tools more often. And so I did that just so I could get back into it, and it's helped. It's definitely helped. So I do sometimes use the traditional stuff. I kind of prefer it for the experience, but sort of, you know, reality has taught me that my elbow won't hold up to that forever. So using the modern stuff, and honestly, the modern stuff does make it easier too, a little bit easier. So I feel like while I'm learning and working out the big problems with my technique, I'll go with the modern tools for now. Okay. That tip is real pointy. I might take a bit of that off, make it more of a Oh, and also, how about a deer ulna bone? Oh yeah. Sometimes these were used, particularly for like for notching. Keep that around as a demonstration item. Okay. A bit more off the bottom here. Let's see, how's that looking for symmetry? It's a little that way. How am I going to fix that? Let's see. I could take a little off this edge, or I could round this a little bit and make it a little less pointy. That's kind of tempting because I feel like this tip is gonna break? I don't know. A little thinner if I straighten this out, or a little shorter and round this a bit. Not sure. I guess if I shorten it a little bit, it will help me deal with that sort of fat spot near the tip, but now I'm just being finicky. The long thin bone piece like this one. I don't know if I've ever tried flaking with this. Let me kind of give it a try. This is probably the wrong time. Oh, it's starting to dig right in. So this would be good for notching. I started to make a, see this right here? I made a little bit of a notch. Oh yeah, if I put my hand behind it. I'll have to, well, maybe that helps me make my decision here, because I definitely want to get rid of that. Yeah, I think I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, and so that it's just a little bit more stout. I kind of, I like to try and use them, and so having them be super super long and thin isn't really practical. Let's see. Bear with me here as I just kind of eyeball this thing, see where I want to go next. Working on a new long video for everybody. Not sure when it will be done. I'm going to try for maybe the end of next week. It's about a variation on the sling that throws rocks. I think it's pretty fun. I think you'll like it. Please hit the subscribe button if you want to see that, and make sure that you see that. Trying to build up my my channel, get the watch hours in so that I can monetize, and then maybe I can make more videos and monetize more, make more, create a cycle there. So maybe making this stuff will be more or less like what I do. Yeah, that's right, Ender Babe. Here's one I made previously. Couple smaller ones here. Here's an obsidian one, and a smaller one with chert, serrated blade. Sharp, 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 sharp. Okay, which way am I going? Raise this edge over here so I can take flakes from the opposite side. As usual, gotta set up the platforms on one side so you can take flakes off the other. And that looks pretty good. And I'll braid. Yeah, it's way too pointy right now. Way too pointy, which is why I'm feeling comfortable making it a little shorter. Get rid of this super pointy tip. I can also make that kind of fat area toward the end. I can make that go away. I agree with you. A little less pointy. I could give it a straight back. Maybe I'll do that. Yeah, kind of like this one. Slight curve on the back, you think too? Okay, yeah. Live with that. Let's see, see if I can get my hands out of the way, kinda, so you can see it. I don't do much with my finished products. I use some of them. I give some of them to friends. But that's about it. Straighten it until about where you're going to make the top and curve it. Make this tang a little bit longer. My tang is the base. Like my other one, okay. A little bit of funkiness up there. There we go. Yeah, I very much still learning this skill. I refer to myself as an advanced beginner. Coming along. Yeah, this heater. Woo! It's kind of all or nothing. Thank you. I appreciate that, Dog Soldier. Yeah, I've got friends that like that sell their work, but I just at least I just don't feel like my stuff is really that great yet. But yeah, I'm open to selling it eventually, but I just want to get I kind of want to get better. I've also in the past made the mistake of ruining perfectly good hobbies by turning them into something to make income from. You know, I'm sure there's ways to do it where you don't like ruin it for yourself, but I've ruined at least one thing for myself by turning it into something where I was making money. That's a weird thing to realize one day. You're like, I don't even think I like this anymore. I don't want to do that with this. I'm not in any danger, but I will be aware. Got some straightening to do in the back to do here. Little update. Should bring some more antler out to hold up as example handles that I could use, but this is a billet that I use for, but it's sort of the smallest one I've got out here where I can start to picture how it would be, kind of like that. Move my hand back a little bit, just use my thumb to hold that there, maybe gives you the idea. Something like that. It's a big knife. Well, big handle, at least. I won't actually use that, but something kind of like it. Make sure that's straight. Probably put a serrated edge along the whole thing eventually. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, and get ready for a new long form video in the next week or so. Oh, I've actually got the thing right over here. Let me grab it. Don't go anywhere. Don't you go anywhere. I'm coming back right now. Just give you a little teaser, a little taste of what I'm working on for the next video. So, hold on here. So this is a sling stick. So you've probably heard of the shepherd sling, like in the David and Goliath story. And maybe you've the big sling staff, the two-handed thing that was used, I don't know, it looks kind of like a lacrosse weapon that was used in, lacrosse stick that was used in medieval times. This is a bit of a, I just dropped my point. Still, phew. So this thing's a bit of a hybrid. It's got a little bowl up here into which you put a stone, and then you bring the strap over the top to hold the stone, And you hold it down here, and then you hold the strap. So I've got everything contained and the rock stays in there. And then you swing, and at the right moment you let go of the strap and the rock goes sailing. The sling stick, I don't see much about it online. So I'm doing a video on how to make this. Not much to it really, so it's not a complicated video or anything like it, but at least I walk you through the parts, different options, different use it, that kind of stuff. So it should be, I don't know, maybe a 10-minute video that kind of covers how the sling stick is used. Thank you, Ghost Lord. Guess it never hurts to use it. All right. Getting thirsty here. Well, I wonder if I should switch gears, set this aside for a little while, and kind of break into a big piece so people watching can get a feel for what this is like more of the time. I've been doing the slow stuff, working on sort of the late stages of that now. But maybe it will be interesting to do some big stuff. So this is an abrader. You could just a piece of stone, flat stone, and I'm taking the sharp edges off for a couple of reasons. One, it's a little safer to handle, and two, it makes the edges stronger. So when I go to hit them with a tool, they don't immediately crush. So what's this process like? I'm going to pick, if I were to hold this up and we were looking through the center of it, a spot that's below the center line. So this whole edge is actually way below the center line. No, but I'm really just getting started with this thing. So it's kind of big and chunky. So the things I need to do are to get rid of this like 90-degree angle here. This isn't good. This is not suitable for getting my way into the stone and shaping it. So I've got to slowly get rid of this whole edge here. And you can see it's still got cortex. This is the subject to the elements. I've got to get rid of all that. So what I'm going to start over here. And I'm going to hit on here with the hope of taking out a flake down here. So I'll hit somewhere in here in order to knock out a flake down here. I'll show you what that looks like. I've only got some of it crushed, but here, we see that little break, and then there's part of the flake, and there's the line I drew right there. So it's a little smaller than my line, but it's the same spot. So that is the process, more or less. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. So I just took off this piece. Now I'm going to hit there. So I'm going back and forth as I work my way down this side to get rid of this 90-degree angle. Well, there's a big flake. So I hit here, boom, and that took off that from right there. And you can see, so I had 90-degree edge in here, and now I've got this undulating, sharper edge, and that is suitable for continuing to work. So I need to get rid of this whole edge by doing this thing back and forth. Over, hit the low spot, flip over, hit the low spot, and again. And maybe one more time. So that 90-degree edge is now gone. This is kind of funky down at this end. Got some cortex, and we got this big spine running down the length. The force likes to travel along these ridges. So here, the force will ripple through the rock, and it will try to follow this line. So let's try to anticipate this. I'm going to hit somewhere in here. Okay, somewhere around where that white is, maybe a little over to this side. So somewhere in there. And then that's going to follow along here. Hopefully. So this is the process. It's sort of learning to set up your hits and read the rock, anticipate how it's going to break based on the fix of it and what you have experienced in the past. I'll abrade this a little bit. Hey, are you ready? So I'm going to get rid of one of those dots because one of them isn't right. I can't really get rid of it. Where that bigger white dot is, and the force will go in the bottom and hopefully take off something like that piece. So I've got to get it well supported on my leg so I don't like break the whole thing in half. And I'm going to hit in the direction of that ridge. So, kind of practice swing too. All right, here we go. So I lost a piece of the top piece. This piece came, oh, it's right here. Can I recreate this? Kind of. So I hit here. And then here's that piece that followed along the ridge and took it off. Pretty cool, huh? So that is the process. Those are the fundamental principles of flint knapping right there. You need the right kind of stone. You need to hit below the center line on the edge. And it will tend to follow ridges where they exist. I just took off this big piece here. I can look down here and see how weird it is, how straight it is, and start trying to bring it all in line. So it's more regular. The mass is sort of evenly distributed around the center. Looking for any particularly weird spots that I know just have to get rid of. Like here. That's a problem. This is called a step fracture. Wherever you've got these, it's a problem. Basically, I don't know what happened here. I don't think I did that this time. But the went in and wasn't adequate to continue, so it stopped abruptly and the piece just breaks in a straight line. The problem with that is, if I were here again to take off a flake from the bottom, the force will travel, encounter this straight line where there's now additional mass, and it will just make that step deeper. So I've got to get rid of this. How? I can got it from this side or maybe from this side to take off this area here to bring it down to the same level as the lower portion. And this is kind of something I spend a lot of time doing. When you're better, you don't make these problems. But I still make problems like this one all the time, and then need to figure out how to get myself out of that problem. Let's see. A little farther, once I've gotten a little farther, I think I'll be able to come in from this way and take that piece off. I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to continue scoping out and looking for opportunities to make it more regular, to bring the mass closer to the center, so that I've got kind of like a, so if you look at it from the side, like this, from the end, I want it to look like a lens, okay, like a football sort of, but thinner. And then I want these edges to be kind of in a line. See how this is really low? And I want to get rid of any of these weird steppers. So basically making the thing much more regular. Get rid of any cortex, which is, you know, old outside material, outside of the stone that might still be there. A lot of abrading along the way. A little more abrading. That crushed. That's why I need the edge to be strong. If it's not strong, it will crush, and then I'll be left with a jaggedy surface, which is not good for either the finished tool or for just proceeding with making the tool. That was a good hit. Put these two back together for you. So I hit here. And that took off this long flake. Well, it broke in two, but this long piece here. So this flake scar was what came off. This long section right in here. Okay. This is obviously, this is quite low. I'm going to take that off. Abrade it a little bit first. That's a funky spot, so hopefully this clears it up a little bit. Yeah, it did. Sorry, where was it? Right here. I left a little bit of a step fracture, which is less than ideal, but not a bad one. So I'll be able to fix that. Subsequent hits. That side's pretty good. That's a little funky over there. Can be ordered online, or you can make them. So it really just consists of these end caps, get in the plumbing department, and then they put some lead in it to make it heavier, and then affix a wooden handle. Okay, so that go about making these on your own. And as you can see, I've got them in a bunch of different sizes. Or you can purchase them online at places like huntprimitive.com, knapping.com, neolithics.com, flintknappingstone.com. Look up copper bopper. So copper bopper, and that's what these are. Okay. Hanging with James. That's a great question. Why do I abrade? A couple reasons. First, the edges left after I hit a piece are very sharp. So by doing this, I make it less sharp. I'm less likely to cut myself. One reason. More importantly, though, when I go to hit this thing, I'm trying to transfer force from this tool into this stone so that it ripples through and makes a nice long flake. I need those long flakes to make it thinner. If I only make short flakes, it's just going to be this big chunky lump. So to get that force to carry through, the edge where I hit, a specific spot is called a platform. I need it to be strong enough to take that force and not just crush. If I pick a real thin edge and hit it hard, I'll just crush it, and that flake won't. So by abrading, we make that edge stronger so that when I go to hit it, that force will carry. So if I abrade other places than where I'm hitting, these thin edges are almost like a radiator for force. And they'll like shimmy and shake when I hit it and dissipate the force and having it carry where I want it to. So it's all about preparing platform so that my hits will produce predictable, thin, long flakes. That you braid. It's often neglected by people who are just starting because it doesn't feel, it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, why would you be making a thing duller in order to make a sharp thing? But it allows you to produce long flakes. And sometimes you need to do a little bit of preparatory work with a cellar bopper in order to change where the platform is. So this platform is very, very low. I could hit it, but it will probably not produce a flake. So I'm going to take off a bunch of little flakes. And what that's done is it's raised this edge up just a little bit. And now I can abrade it. And now, go below the center line, but not way below. And if I hit it, the force will carry nicely and produce a long flake, just like that. I love it when a demo actually works out. Check that out. So you want to hit below the center line, but not way below. You want to make sure the edge is pointed, but not long and thin and sharp, because that'll be too weak. And you got to come at it from about the right angle, about like that. And then you'll get a nice long flake. And if you can do that consistently at various, so right now it's big, so I'm using like the big tool. As it gets smaller, I'll use less force and I'll start using the smaller tools. So it's all getting scaled down. Because if I try to hit, like the piece I was working on earlier with this thing, I'll just snap it in. I'll snap it in half instantly. So you've got to sort of scale your force down as the size of your working piece gets smaller. That's what I'm here for, James. I'm happy to share this knowledge. I will reiterate that I'm not an expert. I'm learning. So not everything I say is going to be perfectly accurate, perfectly correct, but hopefully I can give people who are just starting out a big step forward, you know, a good starting point, save them some time, educate people. The fact that every culture in the world, you know, at some point has used stone tools. This is how all tools were made for, well, all, no, that's overly general. Many of our most effective cutting tools for a very long time were made with stone. I had to qualify my statement a little bit there. I was getting a little bit away, but not too much. It's hard to overstate how important tool technology has been for humankind. James, I know the feeling. There's a pile over there of points that I was working on that I just broke in half at some point. I mean, it's a pile. I don't know why I keep them. It's kind of sad, but it's just part of it. You've got to break a lot of stone to learn the properties of the stone, to learn the tools, the technique. And unfortunately, you've got to break a lot of things that are starting to look kind of good. You just have to. There's no way to get good at this without initially being bad at this. And that is true for many things in life, isn't it? I remember reading somewhere once. I don't remember where, sorry. But it said, if something is worth doing well, like getting to the point where you're really good at it, if it's worth doing, if it's worth doing well, then initially it's worth doing it poorly, because it's the only path to getting good at something like this. You can read all the books in the world, but it won't make you good at this until you get out there and break the stones. It's just, there's no substitute for breaking a lot of rock. Just took off 2 big flakes here, which had the effect of making this edge a lot more of a line. Still got, you know, that, and I can work on those next. Like this one, it's got a nice ridge. It's a nice low spot. Should we do another pencil marked one? Hey, for the people who may have just joined, my name's Doug North. I'm practicing the ancient art of flintknapping, which is how to make stone tools. How it's done right now. So I need to pick up a low point on the edge like this. That point right there. And that should travel down this ridge that you see to make a flake that is maybe shaped something like that. Okay? So I hit here. The force goes down underneath the stone, ripples out a little bit, travels along this ridge, and makes a flake like that. Now, let's see how I do. Just going to abrade to prepare that surface a little bit. Here we go. This one's starting to feel a little big, but I don't think I'm ready to switch yet, am I? I'm going to switch to this next size down. Not enough force. I'm going back to the big one. Well, it kind of worked. It went off to the side. So here's my line. And the flake actually went a bit this way. So that's probably the way I was directing the blow. So it did said, but I hit a little too far this way, and I was aiming a little too far that way. So now I can follow up and try and go after that piece that I marked out initially. I kind of got it. And repeat. So, you know, I'm going to work my way down the edge and then flip it over, try the other one. But as you can see, I don't know if you've been following over minutes, this was big and blocky. It had a lot of like big lumps and stuff. Those have been worked out. It had right angles along the edges. Now we're down to a pinched point along the entire outside, which means now I can continue to work at it. And if we look at it from the end, try and get out of the way here, it's starting to take on that lens shape. The fancy term is a lenticular cross-section. I got this weird little hang here. I don't think I need anything that wide and it's also got some low points. So I think I'm going to take this off and start focusing more on this long oval bit. Maybe I'll hold off on that for a little while, but I suspect that's where we're headed. Remember to abrade. Incidentally, if you decide to practice this, wear eye protection. A glove is a good idea. And make sure you're in a well-ventilated area, because the dust that comes off stone like this isn't something you want to breathe regularly for a long time. It's not good for your lungs. So I've got a filter over there. Oh, what a nice flake. So something like that. Where'd that come off from? If I can show you. Oh, I've lost track of it. Well, anyway, something like this. I set this aside because with very little work, I can, just pressure flaking work, I can make a nice thin arrowhead out of that. So even the waste, you know, this is waste material because it's not the piece I'm working on. But with just a few minutes of work with the pressure flaking tool, this, I can turn this into an arrowhead. Today, made this guy. And yes, I do mount the arrows and hunt with them. It's part of learning these skills for me. Sometimes you got to slow down, take a look at everything. See you are. I got a big piece of mass right here. It's way off from the center line. Like this, that's going to have to go at some point. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And now I'm going to look for like those step fractures. Got something adjacent to that mass. It's not quite a step fracture, but it's close. Not too many of those problems right now. That's good. So how am I going to get rid of that piece of mass? This bit right here. See how it kind of sticks up here? I can come this side or this side. This is a longer way to go from here. That's a longer shot. It's possible, closer. The problem is the center line. So I'm always going to be trying to hit down to remove a flake. And if a piece of mass, the center line is very high, way too high. So I need to take flakes off here first to move this center line down. Then I'll be able to hit to take off that there. So you've got to think a couple steps ahead all the time. You can't just hit it anywhere. You've got to approach it in a handful of things that you have to have set up every time for an effective hit. So let's see. I'm going to take some small tipping flakes to raise that center line. It will shape it a little bit too. So this will become a little bit more rounded, which is fine because ultimately it's going to be some kind of pointy thing. So leaving this as a big round doesn't make sense. But really what I'm trying to do is raise that platform so that when I flip it over, it's up for taking off a flake where that big mass is. I hope that makes sense. Every hit needs to be considered, and if it's sort of a critical one, you really want to prepare. Think a few steps ahead and get yourself really well set up for what you're trying to accomplish. So I've been taking off lots of little flakes here, which knocks off tiny ones down here, which takes this line, this edge, and lifts it up so that when I flip this over, it's lower down. because I below the center line of the piece in order to carry a flake down here to get rid of this base of mass. Let me take a look. I think we're in a pretty good position to go for it. Maybe a few more little flakes just to... I made it a little too blunt, actually. But I think if I hit in there, I'm going to have to aim. It's not perfect. I wonder if I should do a little preparatory hit here. Good. And one more. Okay, good. Okay, so I took off a few larger flakes down here. So then when I flip it, I'm still going after this thing. Now this is low. I need that. That's what I needed. So I'll braid it to make it stronger. I'll hit about here. The pencil's just for showing you. I don't need to do that, but it's kind of a useful exercise. And I'm hoping that I can then take a flake that's something like that. Okay. Let's pick the right tool here. I'm going to go with the biggest, this short one here. But I'm not going to swing real hard. So I'm going to cut the tool do a lot of the work. But I'm trying to take off a pretty good sized flake, and I want it to carry. So that's why I'm using the bigger one. If you don't hit hard enough, the flake can stop, create a step. So it's a balance between hitting hard enough to have the flake carry a long way and not breaking your piece. Here we go. I crushed them. I'm just going to move in a little further. Yep, good. It fractured, but it's just fine. It actually did really well. Okay, so here's my big mass, my big lump. It sticks up right in here. I hit right here, and that took off a flake that broke in two here. And that big mass was right here. It's gone. So this is the kind of process. You're looking for where you want to get rid of stone, preparing the edge for taking a hit that does what you anticipate, just like that. That worked out really well. Somebody highlight that. Can I make a clip again? I don't know how. Highlight saved your channel. All right. I can go back to that and post it online. So as a little example. I'm kind of new to this YouTube live, so bear with me. So right next to Flake, I kind of have a similar situation, but smaller. And I've also got this nice ridge. The force likes to travel down there. Hey, Mike. Well, that's very cool that that someone taught you this. Oh, I kind of whiffed that. I hit too close to the edge. Just going to braid a little bit more. Move in a little bit. Hit a little further in. And be decisive. Like that. Yeah. And I got rid of that lumpy bit right there. So now my edge, look at that. Turning into a blade. It's still kind of a big, weird, rectangular shape. I'll probably start bringing the sides in because at present I have to carry the flakes a long way to get it thick. And there's no way I need something, anywhere near this thick. This whole edge is ready for the next round. In fact, that little too sharp, a little too pointed this way to have the flakes carry a long way. So what I can do is use a smaller tool and just knock off small flakes just to make that a little less pointy, a little less like this, and a little more like this. Not that, but more like that. Okay? And then the flakes will carry a long way. But at the moment, I'm kind of looking at the other side. I'm going to switch to the next, a slightly smaller tool. So, lenticular cross section, got rid of the cortex, got rid of the 90-degree angles. The entire edge has been made into a point in this manner all the way around, which means I can work at any point now. I'll tend to work on this side and then this side, so this way and this way, maintaining the length of the piece as much as I can. This, for those who haven't seen it yet, I hit here, and that knocks a flake off from the bottom, like that. Oh, it's starting to look like a Shearing hand axe. Very large, maybe I'll make one. A very large teardrop shaped tool that was used like this. Going way, way back in history, in prehistory, I should say. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more like a hand axe here. Start to make a tip. Let's see. So you see that starting to point, make a point out of this. I'll take some off this edge to bring this line over so that this comes to more of a point. Hey Dane, what's up? Yeah. So I do have here are billets right here. That's moose. I think these two are mule deer, and this is white-tailed deer. And here's an antlered tine for pressure flaking. So I used to use those exclusively, but I ended up really hurting my elbow. So I got some advice from a friend who's much better at this. And he said, why don't you switch to copper for a while as you're learning? Because it's a lot easier on your joints. So that's what I did, and it seemed to be really good advice. My elbow hasn't bothered me since. But I do appreciate using like authentic everything. So like, you know, this knife that I made, everything about it is authentic, primitive, you know. Chert blade, white-tailed deer antler handle, white-tailed deer back canoe, pine pitch glue, this black stuff right here. So I really, and I enjoy doing authentic, but it was sort of a choice between like continuing to practice or not. So like, all right, well, I guess I'll use the modern tools so I can keep at it. Good question. Good question though, Mike. Good question. That's the way it's been done. Antler tools, antler billets, and pressure flakers. So it's becoming more regular. I think I'm going to try and preserve this long edge. Work more over here. A little bit of a problem right there because it's a bit of a step fracture, a little bit of one right there. Gonna have to be careful of that. I'm gonna hit into that because my flake will probably just stop. I'm gonna take a bunch of small flakes off of here to raise this edge up so that when I flip over, it's lower down, so my flakes will carry this way. See how this side is pretty flat now? Here. Flakes won't really carry that well on a flat surface. This side is more convex. So this is the side I'm going to work on. But to do that, I need to change this where this edge is. I need to make it there so that when it's lower and I can take flakes off like this mass right here. It's a little counterintuitive, but you're really, all you're doing is thinking a couple steps ahead. So I'm going to use a smaller tool to chip away at this edge, just taking small flakes to change where that edge is. Little flakes. See those? You never want to use your hand because those will just cut your hand up. More little flakes, just preparing the whole edge to be a set of striking platforms. Look at it every now and then. Okay, so when I flip it, now this point is much lower. It's probably low enough now. So I'll abrade. So I got the edge lower. Now I've abraded it to make it more blunt, make it stronger. So when I hit it, the force will keep. And I'll get nice long flakes. 3. Oh, that little thing that I said was a problem, it's now more of a problem. I did exactly what I shouldn't do. I hit right into it. The force encountered that step, got deeper. So now I've made a real mess. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to get rid of this big chunk, and it won't be from coming away. I'll just make it worse. I'll have to come from this side, maybe from the end, or maybe from an angle. Basically, I've got to avoid that for a little bit until I figure out the best way to attack it. That was foolish. I said that that's what I couldn't do, and then I did it. All right, I just took this flake off right next to the problem, which is good. I reduced mass behind it. And so I've thickened it a little bit. Maybe I'll try coming from this way now, sort of triangulate around it. All right, that kind of worked. It did. I took out some flakes here, so now we can see my this step right. It's much shorter now. It was like this, and now it's like this. That's progress. I still can't directly into that because that'll just make that deeper. So I've got to just work on it for a little while till I get closer to that edge maybe, and then I can see if I can knock it off. That's called a step fracture. It's what you don't want. Okay, took a bunch off from here. Still avoiding my problem. I'll get to it soon enough. But it's got to be deliberate. I can't just, bluster my way through it. I got to have a plan. Got to have a plan. So many metaphors for life, right? Oh, that was unexpected. Not catastrophic, because I still had a lot of width here. So even though that hit took a turn, it's adjacent to this, my step. I suspect that had something to do with it. So this looks terrible, but what I'm going to do is just take off this stuff, and because this is still really thick. It's not really for me to work with something this wide. And that'll get me real close to my problem so I can just address it. Okay. So my big notch was in there, but it's still super wide, so it doesn't matter. Here's my problem spot. I think I'm just going to try and take off this little bit of edge right here to weaken it. And that way I can flip it over. It will be a low spot, and I'll say goodbye to it. Yeah, that's looking like it's going to work. Let me show you what we got now. So here's my problem. And now I've worked the edge all the way up to where that step was. And I've taken some flakes off below it. So when I flip it over, it's now a low spot right there. Light's not great. See there? Yeah, there. And so now if I hit here, I'd be able to pop that right off. Fingers crossed. There's half of it. Boom. Right there. Now I've got one right here. It's another little pop. Okay. Pretty much gone. That process, my friends. This is a rock called dacite. A lot of people who jump on here ask if it's obsidian. It's close. This is obsidian. This is dacite. Oh, Army Survival School, dude. Awesome. I've gotten to training with a guy who taught those classes. He's a great flint napper. Yeah, and I imagine that helped you a lot. The difference between having a knife and not having a knife is pretty big in a world of survival. As humans, we are very good tools. We just don't have the strength or the claws or the teeth that other animals use to get by. We need the tools. So being able to tools becomes essential. Good job, Mike. I took a primitive primitive skills class in which we just went into the woods with a big chunk of rock and the clothes on our back. And we had to get fire and make our tools, make cordage. It was great. Challenging, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay. Start to make it into like a giant point shape. And that way, as I continue to work from the edges, which you have to, and knock flakes off from the edges will come in. It'll get thinner, but the edges will all come in sort of proportionally. So getting it into the rough, sort of pointed spear tip shape makes sense at this point. That sounds like an awesome training, survival school. Super cool. "41 people still. That is awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Just took off this big flake. Yeah. Got a bit of a curve to sort of pay attention to where I'm taking off a few big flakes, just to sort of straighten it out a little bit. That helped. Took some off from that tip. It looks considerably less curved now. That was helpful. I want a few flakes in here, because it's kind of giving it, see how it's got kind of it looks like a curve that way. It's really just some extra mess over here. So if I take a few flakes off from there, it will have the effect of making it seem, well, and being straighter. Oh, good. That was a good one. So that was the flake right here. And that carried, see how it carried to past the middle, the center line of the piece here? That's good. If you can get your flakes past the center line, and you can do it from both sides, that means you can effectively thin the entire. If your flakes aren't carrying to the center line, you're going to end up with something that's real fat down the middle. More braiding. Get rid of the chips. Okay. Pick the right size tool. Yeah. Okay. So I took that one off from there, and now I moved over, hit on a low spot right here, which took off this flake right here. Okay, can you see that? And can you see that it travels all the way to here? Not quite to the edge, not quite to the opposite edge. Nice, long, thin flake leaves this beautiful flake scar all the way across. I wish they could all be like that. They're like that more of the time, so I'm thankful. Any progress is good. And progress is good, my friends. And that goes for about any aspect of life. Give yourself credit for any progress. If you line up a whole bunch of small increments of progress in flintknapping or any other endeavor, eventually that's going to add up to something. Flintknapping has definitely taught me that. This isn't that you try one afternoon and then you're like, oh, I got it. Yep, I can flintknap now. Nope. It takes time. Sometimes I forget that I always want to be better than I am, but sometimes I forget how much I've improved. A few days ago, I happened upon some arrowheads that I made maybe 2 years ago. Well, I was not impressed. And I remember being really happy with those at the time. So I think it's a moving target, you know? You're trying for constant improvement. But it's worth keeping some of those early efforts around. If I hadn't seen those, you know, in physical form, in my hand the other day, it'd be much harder to put accurately into, you know, the same space that 2 years ago, to recognize now that I've gotten a little bit better, maybe more than a little bit better. You know, I'm definitely improving, and kept those awkward, you know, early efforts around. I'm really able to appreciate that. I think my impulse would be to destroy the evidence, you know. It didn't come out well, like, well, then it never happened. But I held on to those, and I'm glad I did. A bit of a crushed edge there. And I'll take a little bit off this side just to kind of bring it. Want to do that? My impulse is to make it more symmetrical. Yeah, why not? A little bit anyway. $3D stone tools? Let me think about that. Yeah, of course. Of course. That's awesome. That's funny. Merry Christmas to you too. Thanks for joining. My name's North. I'm just working on the ancient art of flintknapping, which is how stone tools were made. This is a nice big piece of dacite. And it might lead to something like this. This is a chert knife that I made some time ago. Or here's a chert arrowhead with the side notches put in there. I love making things, and I love history and anthropology. So this combines all of them for me. Oh, and I like doing stuff in the woods. So these can be used out in the woods. That's you know, it's sort of where all of my interests meet. And I'll tell you, flintknapping for me is a challenge. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, let's go for a shot over here. You know, I just picked up these shorter ones recently. Let me show you compared. This is a really old beat up I'm using. Again, this is called a copper bopper, a percussion flaking tool. It's getting pretty beat up. Seen a lot of action. It still works, but I purchased these shorter ones recently, and I really like them. I'll tell you why. The impulse is to hold these from the end and then hit. Now, if you're a little bit off, it's going to get exaggerated because of the length of the tool. Whereas these, you kind of, by default, end up choked up, holding close to the end. And so if you're off by less. Now, of course, I could just hold this further up here and get the same effect. It doesn't feel natural to me to have this, you know, it's just, you know, might be a me problem. But it feels like these shorter ones kind of just naturally force you to do that. And I feel like I'm getting better control with these shorter. So just my experience, just thought I'd share that with you all in case you decide to get into this and, you know, make or buy some of these copper bopper tools. I think I might continue getting the short one. I like them. That's right, Johns. The copper bopper. I've got antlers here. Yeah, you got to hit harder with the antler. I haven't used them in quite some time. Yeah, quite a bit more force. It's a softer material. They have their advantages, but I think that's probably the extra force is probably what contributed to elbow issue way back when. Try another hit here. Yeah, works well. It's a different feel, but traditional tool. Let's see. Working on a, I guess at this point we would call it a biface or a preform. It's nothing in particular yet, but it's been worked down into this regular shape, starting to take a point. It's kind of a blank at this point. You know, I could stop now, and historically or prehistorically, I could stop right now, hold on to this, and then make it into a tool later, or trade, because probably the stone was valuable, and the work I've done to get it stage is valuable. So this is something I could trade for something else, maybe something that's not in my region. Yeah, right. Now we're definitely on track for a spearhead here. I've never mounted a stone point to a spearhead, I don't think. I've made a lot of arrows. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. I've made a number of arrows. But I don't think I've ever put a stone point. I should do that and practice throwing it with the spear thrower. I've done that, but I've always used either just the wood tip, field points, metal field points. I should do that. I should make an atlatl with stone point. That's a good project. Yeah. Just trying to get the light to catch it, so get a good feel for it. So there's the thickness. Looking pretty straight. That's nice. And at this point, not a lot of problems, not a lot of big problems to work around, which is rare for me and a blessing. I'm happy with that. Some funny stuff in here. Let's see if I can address that a little bit. Maybe not. It's going to be a big deal. Okay. Okay, I can take off some in there. I'd like to get rid of that funny bit. Ooh. Weird little center line break there. Hope that doesn't through very far. I hope I haven't weakened it right there. I'm not sure what that's about. Sometimes there are just funky bits within the stone that you can't see. And unfortunately, you can only discover them by breaking into the stone and realizing, uh-oh, that stone is less than perfect. That's one reason I like this dacite to practice with, is very uniform on the inside. Not a lot of, you know, differences in consistency or weird pockets. Like this chert I was working on some time ago, a few days ago, this white area at the tip. So it's mostly gray, like lighter gray, darker gray, and then almost white. This white area is very crumbly, hard to work consistently. So this dacite, very, very uniform. I think that's something I like about it. I mean, that's true of like obsidian as well. How's everyone doing? If you're just joining, my name's Doug North. I'm practicing making stone tools using the very ancient craft of flintknapping. Historically, it was done often with using one stone to make flakes off of another stone, or pieces of antler to knock flakes off the stone. I'm using some more modern tools, these copper tipped tools instead of the stone. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that very much. I really do. Trying to build up my Instagram, oh my God, my YouTube channel. Oh no. Well, folks, look what I just did. Cry for me. I did something silly. I didn't, oh, so is that along that weird? Let's see. Yeah, I think it is. A few minutes ago, I took a flake off and noticed it had a weird straight line through the middle of it that I didn't expect. Yeah, the whole piece, I tapped the end of it. Not very hard. I'm going to take off this funny little bit here on the end. And that was enough to cause it to fracture. Hitting isn't a great idea, generally, by the way. But it was still thick enough that I thought I could get away with it. But whatever that weakness was, that was enough. Now, that is still a pretty good size piece that has been bifacially worked. I can still totally use this. Continue working on that to make something pretty good. This could be made into the scraper. But I'm just going to round out this bottom a little bit. I'm going to salvage this somewhat. Yeah, I'm not sure what led to that, honestly. I'm not sure if there was an imperfection in the stone or if I did something weird. I don't think I did, but as I will continue to remind you, I am not an expert. I am an advanced beginner. And we advanced beginners make all kinds of mistakes. I know better than to hit from the bottom. It's risky because it causes a shock wave. You hit on the end and it causes a wave to move through the stone. And as you can imagine, the stone, it's weak in the long dimension, and so then it will flex a little bit, and if it flexes, it's... Hey, William, this is dacite. A lot of people are asking, is this this is obsidian. See how it's real shiny? And this is dacite. So both are black. You can make stone tools out of both of them. But yeah, it's dacite. Yeah, totally, Mike. Can still make tools out of both for sure. It's not really a disaster. I was just being dramatic, but you know, it's always a little hard to see a nice big biface split down. It's not really what we want. Not really what we were going for, but it sure does happen. Just sort of rounding and getting rid of the 90-degree angle on the bottom there. Carefully, because I'm hitting on the much shorter now, and lot less prone to break because it's not nearly as long. And I'm not wailing on it. I'm not hitting it really hard. Never mind stones. What about Happy Christmas, man? Well, Happy Christmas. Why not both? Why not both? Maybe we're starting a new Christmas tradition. Flintknapping Christmas. Okay. So I just got rid of that square edge. Still, you know, good size preform. Yeah, I can make a spear point, knife blade, certainly an arrowhead out of that. Maybe I'll refine it a little bit. Woohoo! Yeah, we'll definitely salvage that little unfortunate event. Yeah, still a nice, good size piece making something out of. I just love the surface that flips on a stone. The folks who are really good at this can pressure flake it such that they leave behind like perfectly aligned flake scars. I cannot do that. Not yet. Not yet. One day. One day maybe. So if you were first here when I was pressure flaking this knife blade. See how thin that one got? And I've made a tang on the end here so that can go into some sort of like handle, maybe an antler handle like so. But I'll show you what pressure flaking looks like on this piece that I've been working on. It's a little too early. I mean, I can do it, but I'm really just doing it to sort of mix it up and show you. So I'm going to use a rubber pad. You can also use a thick pad of leather, and it sits on there. I'll use the Ishi stick. It goes under the arm like this, and I put it on one of the low spots, and then I'll squeeze together, and the pressure of all that drives a flake off the edge. So this is a very controlled way to create flakes on the edge compared to hitting, where your aim has to be perfect. This doesn't really involve aim. It takes aim out of the equation, which is kind of nice. Actually, those are carrying kind of nicely. It's still a little thick for this, but just to give you a feel for what that's like. So a lot of the force is coming from my legs. You can do it if you're strong. Just do it with your arms and shoulders, but it typically requires so much of that you end up with some kind of repetitive injury. So better to use the real big muscles of your legs, and you get a lot of force so that you get longer pressure flakes. Another thing you can do is sort of preload it. So you put it there and you start applying force. So I'm squeezing now, but I'm increasing it slowly until it breaks on. There's the flake, and there's where the flake came from. So it's this very small flake. Actually, there's two in there. And it just came from right there. And people who are really good at this can control the flakes so well that they'll go like all the way across the piece and they can just line them up. It's beautiful. It's so far beyond me though. It's well beyond my skill level. Where did I put the pad? There it is. Yeah, it's much more controlled, as you say, No Names. It's and it's very helpful when the piece gets thin, because every time you take a swing at it, you're kind of risking breaking it. This is not thin at all, but you know, for those who've been following along for a while, it might be neat to just see a different side of the process. A very important and sort of integral part of the process. And this can also be done with just the hand version, so you don't always have to use this super long one. You can just use this. It's the same deal, you know, try to get your legs involved, because it's just more efficient and you're less likely to hurt yourself over time. And just push off those flakes. You put it pushing into the stone. See that? I'm directing the force like into it. And that will make the flake carry so that it's longer. So I just did this one. Let's see, I'll put it back. So right here, that flake, I just pushed that flake off. This can be a useful thing for just setting up a hit that you want to do. So like this is still really thick. I would still be using percussion, but let's say I had a little problem or something and I knew I wanted to hit a specific area. I could use this to prepare that area. I could take rock away from a spot to sort of weaken it so that my subsequent hit would be more effective. Or I could take area away so that I left a bit like definitely sticking out, so that when I go to swing at it, that bit is clearly sticking out and I have a really good chance of hitting it and only it. So this key, used in combination with the percussion method that I was doing earlier. And you still need to abrade for the same reasons. If I want the flake to carry, if I put the pressure flaker on a real thin, like razor edge, it's gonna crush and break right through it. And I won't have accomplished anything. I'll have made it worse. But if I abrade it and kind of make it blunt a little bit, then when I go to pressure flake it, that flake the force will carry on and make a longer flake. I wonder if I can get the light to catch these. You hear how these are starting to line up? Doop, 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 doop. So if you're very careful with your pressure flaking, you can get these regular patterns. And people who are good at these can get the flakes to go like all the way. It's really nice. But not something I can accomplish really. I can get a little bit of a pattern going, but I'm not usually trying to, and it's kind of beyond. Pretty cool. So this will be something I can continue to work on. I can put it down and just back to it, and it's like, okay, I've got a good start on something. It's doesn't have any step fractures. It's got a lens-like cross section. It's already kind of, and with like a fresh set of eyes, come back at it and sort of finish it off into something. So sometimes it's good to just sort of leave pieces like this, step away and come back. Like here's one I did some time ago, a little bit bigger. And that's what this piece of obsidian is. It's like, this isn't a finished tool. It's just a piece that I brought down to like sort of this regular triangular shape, relatively thin, ready to be made into something else when the mood, hits me. Actually, I'd like to try pressure flaking the obsidian. It's going to have a different feel. And I got to remember, the flakes that come off of this are really sharp. Put it on a low spot, right on the edge, and I'm pressing sort of into the piece. Now I'm squeezing with my legs slowly until I break a piece off. All right, that was a pretty small flake. I can set the tool in deeper because that was really small. Yep. Making some nice flakes. Let's try right here. Yeah, that one carried to the middle. That's nice. Definitely force is needed for the obsidian because it's more brittle. And this is a really good time to have a glove on your left hand. When these flakes come off, they kind of go wherever they go. You don't want them going into your hand or your shoes. That's a nightmare. You don't want these in your shoes. I always tuck my pants into my boots to make a sort of a stopper. Come up with some way that these don't go into your shoes. Don't do this barefoot. It should go without saying, but I mean, I'm sure plenty of people have done it barefoot, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's already looking a little tool-like, even though I'm not really going to any pattern here. I'm just sort of tinkering with the tool, the flaking tool. I lost the tip. No big deal. Pretty cool. I did just do another technique that I didn't mention to you. It's called shearing. Sometimes I've mentioned that I need to make the edge stronger to make the flakes carry. So I could go through and just make a lot of little flakes that are blunt, or I could abrade like crazy. The other technique to do is take the edge of this tool, not the tip, but the side, and crunch along the edge, like. Actually, I'll try and get a little closer. You can see what I'm doing. Okay, this is called shearing. So I'm going to use the edge of the copper, and I'm pushing down along the side of the piece, and I'm making a string of flakes, and that's making this edge more blunt, so that when I go to do subsequent in this direction, the stone is it's sort of the proper level of dullness to be more strong. Okay, that's called shearing. Looks like this. Shearing. It's sort of just a way to make blunting this faster. Taking off tons of little flakes, or spending a lot of time grinding. So it's just sort of an expedient technique to make the part more efficient. That was kind of redundant, but I hope you follow my meaning. It basically allows you to prepare an entire edge very quick for now flaking the opposite side. I forget to do it a lot of the time. I just haven't gotten into the habit of using it as a technique, but always happy with it when I do remember. And I'm basically flaking all down one side of one edge. So I just did those. I don't know, VT Rang. I'm sort of just practicing. I wouldn't use obsidian for an axe head. It's too brittle. Here, this is an axe head that I've started, made out of chert. Not as brittle. The idea is to got this to shape, is to follow it up with grinding. Grind this on a rough stone until it's smooth. It's a very long, very boring process, so I'm not doing that on the live stream. Probably more like a knife or spearhead. I need to decide, and I haven't. The difference between a knife and a spearhead is not very much, at least at this stage. So I can sort of call it either one. And if something goes wrong and I kind of mess up, well, I can just make it smaller and turn it into an arrowhead, which is what happens a lot of the time. End up with a lot of arrowheads because you broke some bigger along the way. Okay, just do that. Also abrade a little bit so that the tool doesn't slip off the very slick obsidian. Just gonna rough that up a little bit. Obsidian is so smooth that the metal tool kind of likes to slide right off of it. And so abrading like that just help the tool stay on the stone while you're putting. Ooh. Yeah. A little bit more. I'm starting to get a bit of a flake pattern in here. See how they're kind of oriented like this? They're not traveling quite as far as I would like, but let me keep at it and improve upon that. Boy, obsidian is pretty. Yeah. Yeah, KG Obsidian. I've been working with Dacite mostly today, but thought I'd switch over to this for a little while. Do a little pressure flaking on the obsidian. Let's see, I've been working on this edge. What's next? This edge is very sort of irregular. Don't see a line of flake scars, so I'll abrade. Get rid of this dust. This is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Now I'll put it right on the edge and I'm going to press in. Let me standing up a little bit. See if you can get a kind of a better perspective on how this works. Okay. So I'm pressing in. This tool gets right on a low spot on the edge. Now I'm pressing in toward the center of the piece. There's the flake. There's the flake scar. That's where it came from. Now I'll move over just, say right here. There's the flake. There's the flake scar. Move over. There's the flake. There's the flake scar. So I'll go all the way down this edge. I should get a camera, huh? Maybe like zoomed way in. You got it, Mammoth. I love this stuff too. Nice username, that. Speaking of mammoths, they have found stone spear heads lodged within the vertebrae of woolly mammoths in archaeological sites. That means someone used a spear with enough force to get through the mammoth hide and meat and embed into one of those giant vertebrae. In all likelihood, they used a spear thrower, which increases the power of the human arm. Just amazing to consider that at one point, people with little more than this for technology were very successful at hunting something as massive as a woolly. That's mind-blowing. If you stop and think about that, that is crazy. It's a giant animal, huge. And they were out with only things that they made. There were no stores. Probably were no specialists in terms of crafts. You probably made your tools, went out with your group, coordinated, knew the behavior of those animals, and put together to successfully harvest a woolly mammoth. It's just, I think it's pretty hard, most of us in this day and age, to get our heads around what an undertaking, what a tremendous feat that was, and that they did it as a way of life. It's just, we're talking about something that's, you know, as big as, very capable of defending itself. Just crazy. Stone tools. You were pushing from the side and not the middle. The side and not the middle. Maybe the edge pushing from, I'm not sure what you mean, but so if I'm taking a flake off, I'm going to pick a low spot here, and then I'm going to push. I'm directing the force toward the center of the piece and a little tiny bit down, but mostly this way. Once I built up some pressure this way, I might do a little bit of pressure down, but the obsidian doesn't really need it. That would be more like with the harder stones. The obsidian is so fragile. If I basically just put pressure toward the center, I had to push down a little bit there. That takes off the flake. I'm glad that was helpful. If I can be more clear, I'll answer questions if I can. But it sounds like you figured out something that you were doing maybe a little off. So that's good. It's amazing how much you can advance your practice of this by just getting a little tip from someone who's been doing it a long time. You can't really learn it from books to a degree, but it's real limited. You run up against problems quickly, and it's not clear how to solve them. But if you watch someone who's experienced, can explain it to you, like right in person, show you what they do, that is often enough to keep you practicing productively for months. It really helps to see it like this, but then also to do it in person if you can find someone to teach it, you know, local, or you can travel somewhere. these big corners on the end. They don't really serve much purpose as far as I can imagine. Started to round off the bottom a little bit. Well, folks, I have really appreciated you tuning in. Once again, my name is Doug North. I practice all kinds of primitive skills. I like to make things from the past, from history, prehistory, and this is just one of them. Building up my channel, I've got some videos on there on things like starting friction fires, making stone tools, making cordage. Did one recently about the earliest stone tools. Please check that out. Check out some of my longer videos and like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I really appreciate you spending some time with me. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the thoughts and the courtesy that you've all shown to me and to each other. And I'll be doing this pretty regularly about this time, several times a week. And I encourage you to stop by with some questions or whatever. And I'm happy to answer if I'm able. And I really do appreciate the time you've spent with me. And any time spent, check out my other content on YouTube or elsewhere. Once again, I'm Doug North. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful holiday if you're celebrating one. And I hope you have a great day. Otherwise, if you're not, I'll see you again really soon. And once again, thank you very much.